Yeah.
Yeah, there should be.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We are joined by Sean from Inventory Base and Kieran from Catoni, who will be talking on challenging form-based thinking, how open property data is taking down barriers to moving home. If you have any questions, you can pop them in the chat box and we'll try and get through as many as possible at the end of the webinar. Alternatively, you can email events@propertymark.co.uk, where we can forward these over to Sean and Kieran at the end. I'll now pass you over to start the webinar. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you, and welcome everybody. I'm Sian from Inventory Base. We're a software as a service company. You'll probably know us from doing property report software, and you'll see us as a Propertymark supplier in many of the events throughout the year. And I'm joined, really pleased to be joined by Kieran. Kieran is for Catini. It's a platform for transforming the real estate industry by reducing the onboarding and compliance tasks that everybody in the estate agency has to manage. So thank you, Kieran, for joining us today.
You're welcome. Nice to be here.
Great, let's kick off, shall we? So, property data. So how is property data taking down barriers to moving home? Change is challenging. We all know that. In some respects, I think certainly in the last few years, we've embraced more change than ever before, but it is challenging and we need innovation because it is essential for us to all progress. Otherwise, we wouldn't be where we are today. If you think about it, I was looking at a aeroplane the other day, very simple thing. But if you think from when the Wright brothers first started to build paper airplanes to now we have transatlantic flights, all of that requires innovation. Every step of the way, something has changed. Someone's thought about something, and we need that to continuously evolve. And open property data is a part of that evolvement, certainly within our industry. It can really improve the home moving process. It promotes interoperability and it helps eliminate barriers for buyers and sellers. But I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand this and also what it means for the industry. And I think one of the bigger questions, I don't know about you, Kieran, is, are we ready for change? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think so. Like if you reflect back 2, 3, 4 years ago, I forget how long ago COVID was now, but you look at the rate of innovation that happened in agencies across the country to deal with the challenges that were faced there. That was a very rapid period of innovation and technology being adopted. It really drove that forwards. And what we're seeing now is a lot of agencies really reaping the benefits of that efficiency and also using some open data to really personalize their client experiences. So I think it's happening. But yeah, it's all about raising awareness of what the power of open data can do, open property data can do for agencies, but then also their clients as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think the key issue also is it ready for change, and I think we need to understand that. So I thought today, Kira and I, we would just talk you through where we think we are in the industry. And one of the things that comes up quite often is about forms and form-based thinking. So we thought it was a great topic to kind of really discuss and explore, and also understand how it's transitioning into open data. So we'll also be looking at the benefits of interoperability. Great to say that as long as you've got your tongue in the right place. Some practical applications and strategies for leveraging open data. And then we'll have a Q&A right at the very end. So form-based thinking, definition principles. So form-based thinking, this focuses on structured data input through defined forms, and it emphasizes standardized data collection and entry processes. So this is basically collecting information from whatever source it is. So that from an agent point of view, if you're selling or a house for someone, you're collecting their information to find out who they are, what the property is about, to be able to then show that to someone else to be able to then decide, yes, I do or don't want to buy that property. But we do a lot of form-based kind of work, data collection, and we're still thinking in those kinds of terms. I mean, Kira, from your point of view, what kind of forms can you think of right off the top of your head that we're still using in today's market?
Yeah, there's quite a few, and they're kind of static forms, right? So more recent ones you can think about is the property information questionnaire, for example, a static set of forms that you provide to your client. You've got others that in adjacent industries, like the legal protocol forms are some. You've got the BASB forms, the buyer and seller property information pack, the RICS home survey, and then any other kind of transactional forms that you're using with your client to gather information, right? Like it goes beyond just material information, which a lot of these things touch, but also the information you're collecting about your client's property for marketing purposes, right? You might be collecting information that's broader than what's required for material information to help you do your job. And typically you're sending out a standardized form that client is then requested to fill in, and some of those things, parts of that form may or may not be relevant to them. So it's quite a clunky way of collecting information for certain clients.
Yeah, and I think certainly this day and age, we're getting really used to writing everything either on a desktop, on a tablet, on a phone. I mean, even schools, I've got two young nieces who are at school at the moment, and they do all of their work on tablets. They don't use paper anymore. They don't use the kind of old style school booklets that we used to have, where you used to, write up what's happening in your day, or do collages and stuff like that. Everything is done digitally, and form-based thinking is realistically no longer efficient. It really doesn't help the buyer, it doesn't help you as the agent to be able to progress forward. And it really limits how we move home and the whole moving structure. The data structures, they're rigid, they can limit the flexibility because obviously you're controlled by that form. You're controlled by the information you're being asked for. And sometimes you'll be asked a question, you think, actually, I have more to say and I don't have space to write it because there's a physical restriction with the form, or it's not quite clear and I don't know where to ask, and then I've got to ring up someone and I've got to do something. So, it makes it really, really, like Kieran just said, really slow. And also, you can't integrate with other systems. So there's never been a bit of paper that can literally integrate with another bit of software or information unless you put it in, you manually add it, you import it, or you scan it. All that takes time. All that really slows the process down, and that's time consuming. It's repetitive, and if you think about it, I mean, certainly you mentioned earlier on, Kieran, about COVID, because everything's kind of done pre-COVID, etc. Is that having to put that data entry in, you need people to do that, and a lot of agents have actually slimmed down their processes in regards to the people they actually have in the office, because certainly COVID made it much more difficult to people to be in the same place. So, trying to shuffle reports around between either desks, offices, or home-based desks is going to be particularly difficult.
Yeah, exactly. And we've kind of seen a change a little bit from paper-based form thinking to more digital form-based thinking, but it's the same kind of mindset, right? Like we've a lot of agencies have taken those paper-based forms and replicated them in Google Forms or Jot Form or something similar. But the same principle is there. You're collecting this data, and maybe you have a little bit of flexibility on the fields that expand or whatnot that the client can fill in, but the form-based thinking is still there because that data, it's not passing onwards unless someone's sitting there and keying it into your CRM. But even then, it's in your CRM and it's not being used to the benefit of your consumer. And I think this has really come to the fore recently, where the material information, where clients are filling in information for you, and then your conveyance, or their conveyancer rather, is coming along and asking for similar information. It's a bit frustrating for the client, and I think form-based thinking kind of creates that environment where the inefficiency of the process is being experienced a whole lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same as anything, if you've got a very structured, very rigid way of working, or like
Yeah.
you said, capturing information, it just doesn't give you that ability to expand out and, like you said, connect with others. And that's where we need to transition to open data. And if you think about open data, is data that's freely available for use, reuse, and redistribution. And certainly something both Kieran and I are involved with the Open Property Data Association, is to promote transparency, and with that comes innovation and collaboration, because there's no barriers, and that's the whole point of what we're trying to achieve today, is to look at, well, how can we remove the barriers, how can we make it easier for buyers and sellers to move through the home buying process, so that we're not waiting 5 to 6 months to buy and sell a house, and then all of the issues that come with that, because often, the longer it takes, the more errors and issues will creep in. So having open data makes it freely available, and it means then we can collaborate much, much better. So the data that differs from traditional systems is that traditional data systems are often siloed and proprietary, whereas open data encourages sharing and interoperability. And I think you just touched on that a moment ago, didn't you, Kieran, about the fact that if it's your information, you're not sharing it, then that's siloed, isn't it?
Exactly. And the value of that data is diminished, right? Like, I think of the question in material information now. You may inquire with your client around spray foam because you know it's going to impact the mortgageability, and a lot of people need to get a mortgage on that property. That's not only data that's valuable to you as the estate agent with marketing that. The financial services firm, the broker, the lender, that is super useful data to them. And kind of the current ecosystem, this siloed data, means that the value of that data isn't shared, and that poor client or seller is having to repeat information to other individuals. And so being open with the data that you'll collect, or working with providers that enable the sharing of open data, really enables efficiency in that process and smooths the journey for your clients, reducing that repetition, reducing the amount of times they're asked for that same bits of information.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is why you said we need to be clear on, said, why there is such a big difference. And also then it gives us the ability to then decide, well, how we're going to, get across that barrier, how we're going to make it so that we can share that information and share it well. And I think that's where open data standards really come into the fore, because they enable different systems to communicate and share information. As like Kieran just said, but, we're already doing that with the CRMs. We're already integrating, certainly from an inventory-based point of view, we integrate with all the major CRMs, because we know people need to be able to share information and share it quickly without any barriers, so that people can then do the jobs that need to be done going on through the home buying and selling journey. And by having that data integrated, it means we can share the information seamlessly. It can be quick, it could be responsive, especially when there's key questions to ask. I mean, just going back to form-based thinking, some of the transactions forms we've got at the moment within the buying and selling process are paper-based, and therefore, and there's no, from what I can see at the moment, no kind of movement to make them digital, to make them easy to share and to use. And that's kind of like pulling us back a little bit, because we've got so much information we want, and like material information, but if we can't then get it and move it forward, then we are going to slow the process down. And that's why we're at 5 to 6 months worth of time before we can actually hand over the keys to the new buyer of the property, that, as a seller, we would probably want to be done and dusted within a month. And certainly if you look at other countries, they're already doing it at that kind of time and speed. So we need to really look at how interoperable our information is and how we can share it and do it quickly. And there's a power in open data. It creates transparency and trust, and something certainly within our industry we don't have a lot of trust. If you look at all the various polls that have ever been done about estate agents, we don't really top high on the trust element of it. In fact, we're normally very high on the distrust element. So we need to change that dynamic. We need to change that way of thinking, and with that we can improve decision making, we can improve access, and we can give comprehensive data to everybody within the buying and selling journey quickly and efficiently. And all of this creates innovation through new applications and services, because we're all constantly thinking. Certainly, I know with Kieran and Katina, certainly us with inventory base, we're always thinking one step ahead. Okay, what's coming up next down the road, or coming up over the horizon, where we need to change, we need to make our processes better, and include more information, and also integrate with a wider stakeholder placement, so that it's easier for everybody to be able to do their job. And Kieran, again, material information, property listings, real-time analytic tools, or real-time market analysis really does help if we've got open data. And that's certainly something that you're doing in what you're doing with Katini.
Yeah, exactly. And so what you're able to do with open data rather, it has some synergies with open banking, but it is open property data is really enrich the experience for your consumers, right? So if I think about the sales side of the process with using the open data, I'll use a simple example around EPCs because that is data that is open and you can get from EPC register. Um, there are tools out there today that you can leverage to help inform and educate your vendor about the value that they could add to their property if they were to increase the energy efficiency of it. I know the minimum energy efficiency standards have kind of disappeared at the minute with the current government, but they may come back. But having the access to open data and using open data gives you the ability to lean into those tools and really personalize the vendor experience to your client. And that only adds value, right? It sets you apart from your competitors on your patch. It also creates opportunities for you to create other revenue for your business as well. So it really is quite powerful what you can do with open data. But it all starts with how you're collecting the data in your business first. If you're collecting things on pen and paper, that data really can't be used to leverage these external tools without someone actually sitting there and looking at it and working out, okay, yeah, this is a good property to maybe upsell that service or educate that consumer. But with tools and collecting data the right way in a standardized format, you can start to layer on these bits of technology to really enrich your client's experience, but also keep your business efficient. So you're not having an army of admins collect it and then look at it to work out what to
Yeah,
do.
absolutely. And it also it prevents delays, doesn't it, as well?
Yeah.
It's one of the points we've got there, public records integration for property history, is the fact that, more and more of the public records are being digitized, but there's only a small portion of it. So there's still a hell of a lot that is still form based. And to be able to then move that information around in the ether is very, very difficult without exporting it, adding it to different systems manually. That all creates time in regards to the lag in the amount of time taken for that property to get through the process, but also it introduces issues, it introduces mistakes. And then they can be very, very costly, either to the buyer who gets a property that actually isn't fit for purpose because there's certain things that they didn't know about that would have affected their decision had they known, or also the fact that from a seller's point of view, they're waiting on buyers to get the right information, and of course they're delayed, and of course then that all hits the conveyancing process. So the information to speed up conveyancing process is all built around open data, and that's where we need to be. And it also gives the ability for different systems to work together. That's what interoperability is. It allows the data to flow seamlessly and between different and various platforms. So your CRMs, your third-party suppliers, anybody realistically involved in the ecosystem of buying and selling properties, and also renting properties as well. And all of this reduces admin. It reduces repetitive data entry, which we've already mentioned. It reduces the risk that comes with that. The wrong, I don't know, wrong number in one spot, the wrong wording, the terminology used somewhere else that can really skew the information. But it also streamlines communication between stakeholders. So we said we can all talk in real time. If you think about it, Kieran, banking, you mentioned that earlier on. I mean, you think about it, the framework that open banking is built on is not that dissimilar to open property data with the association and the property data trust framework. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, in some senses it is. I'd say I'd argue the property transaction a little bit more complex. You have a lot more parties involved in the process, like conveyancers, estate agents, brokers, and whatnot. But the principles are the same, right? Data is collected in a standardized way, and your consumer, your client, is giving you permission to access and share that data. The same could be possible in the property space if we started to use open property data and kind of taking it a step back to that reducing repetitive data entry. If you collect the data in the right way the first time with your seller and that buyer has then bought the property from you, well, you know what, you already have that data for that buyer. So when that buyer is coming up to sell, maybe you get an indicator, maybe they've contacted you. That second time round when you're selling that property, actually the workload is a lot less because you're not digging around and let's be honest, no one really does this. You're not digging around for paper files to work out what was filled last time. You've got a set of data. And so the question to your client then becomes, okay, what needs updating? What have you done to the property that increases its value or whatnot? So yeah, really reduces that repetitive kind of parts of the process for sure.
And it said it gives us that real-time update, doesn't it? Like you said, and I think nowadays, especially nowadays, we want everything like now or yesterday, at a certain time, a bit like Amazon, for want of a better phrase.
Yeah.
If we don't have our Amazon delivery within 2 hours of ordering, we think something's up. So we've become very used to sharing information and getting things, for want of a better way of looking at it,
Yeah.
quickly. So the fact that, certainly from an industry point of view, we're not there yet, kind of like says, well, we need to improve. And I think that's where the interoperability of our software, our services really come into play.
Yeah.
And
And just on that, sorry, Sean, on that point, like if
go
I
ahead.
was to teleport ourselves 10, 15 years ahead, you think about the lending process on properties, right? It's a bit backwards in that a client goes and gets their selves credit risks, and yes, I'm eligible for a mortgage, and then they bring the property along, and then the property gets credit assessed. Well, with open property data, one of the kind of future aspirations is that, well, when you have this data at source, it's there, it's real time, the lenders can themselves pre-qualify a property. So those lenders will say, well, Halifax, NatWest, whoever might say, yes, I'm happy to lend on this specific property, just find a buyer, and you can really speed up the process like that. And kind of going back to that real time, faster process, it's those kind of things that open data unlocks, because at the minute it's not until you're 3-4 months into the transaction where that data comes out and the broker has what they need to do their job.
Yeah, exactly that. And as I said, I mean that list we've got there on the screen: real
Yeah.
estate agents, buying sellers, banks, conveyancers, surveyors, third-party suppliers. They're just rather high touch points. There's loads involved in the whole of the journey. And like I said, the more people there are, then the more potential for issues to creep in, the more problems that might arise. Whereas if we can streamline it and trust the data that's coming through, because it's been through the open data trust framework, then we can speed up the process even more. We're not then constantly looking back going, is that correct? Is that what it is that I'm seeing? Has that come from a trusted source? Do I need to do any more work on it, or can I just forge ahead? And that all again helps with speeding up the process. And it also then helps break down barriers to open data. So if you think current barriers are the data sources that we've already discussed, are fragmented. We've got paper-based stuff, we've got siloed information, we've got information that we don't necessarily trust because we've not really looked into that place of where they've coming from. Has that been built on the fact that that information has been properly researched? Has it come from a trusted source? Has it been manipulated in any way? And then that creates a lack of transparency. And again, trust comes back down into it again, because if we don't have it transparent, if we're not quite sure, we can't trust it, therefore we're not going to rely on it, which means we're then going to have to constantly go back over our own information, rechecking, checking again, increasing the admin and increasing the risk of errors creeping in. And that's all time consuming. And people often think about it, admin, as not someone just sitting away tapping in data, but admin, we have to do that every step of the way. So it's involved in the whole of the process. So of course, if you've got one part of the admin process that takes 5 minutes, another one, another 5, another 5, all of a sudden you're building up to an hour and then more hours, and sometimes even days and weeks, that we could really strip down if we could move that data around the system much quicker with the trust element in there. And that's where, how open data can really address and remove the barriers to what we want to do in regards to selling and buying property. It centralizes and standardizes the data access. It provides that transparency so that we can rely on that data source. We can say, yeah, I'm happy with that. I can move forward. Conveyancers can look at it and don't think I've got to go and check myself, because actually I don't need to, because I know that data is being resourced and sourced correctly and to a proven standard. And automates the process, and that's what we're trying to get to, a point of that we can literally click a button, put a bit of information in, and it goes to everybody, to all the stakeholders that need it, and it also pings back with the information that we want. A bit like, again, open banking, because I use that as an example, because at the moment, I mean, this morning I paid a bill. The bank allowed me to pay the bill through a trusted source. I got a confirmation back literally instantly. I can then carry on with my day because I know the bill is paid, and I know I'm not going to end up getting a small fine for not paying it. So that is all built on a framework that is talking to the right people at the right time, at the right level, with the right information that is trusted. So therefore, it's taking out all of the thoughts and barriers for me to be able to do that. And that is no different to property, but obviously on a much bigger scale, with a lot more money involved. And, so we talk about removing barriers. This is all about streamlining property search and comparison. This is all about making sure that the friction points are reduced by open data, so we can get easier access to financing and legal information, and even things like simplifying the change of address procedures. If you think about how much time and effort it's taken just to let post office know you're going from one address to the other, having everything moved over and making sure nothing gets missed, and you don't have to go back to the property, go and pick up your mail, etc. All of that is simplifying that particular process by having open data. And again, financial services are already doing this. There's an element of that in the legal side, especially in conveyancing, but we need to be able to do more and be seen to be doing more as well. And certainly, when it comes to open data, we need to be able to leverage it. We need to identify relevant open data sources, ensure the data quality and reliability and the trust of it, and build the partnerships with the data providers. And that is something that certainly Inventory Base and Catini are doing each and every day by having our integrations are open APIs, and talking to systems and being able to create that frictionless, that seamless data share. I mean, what other examples would you use there, Kieran?
Yeah, so on the open data sources, I mean, there's a handful of them that you can get. So EPC Register was one that I mentioned. The HM Land Registry source is another one, paid for, but it's still an open data source in that it's publicly available, right? So you've got those kind of at source data sources, and then what you've got is companies, as you say, like us, Inventory Based, Catini, and others, where they are taking that credible data and aggregating it for you, the agent, to reduce the amount of time it takes you to gather it. And they're doing it in a way where that data comes with provenance. So provenance being the ability to prove where that data came from, and with a level of credibility, and that preserves the trust of that data, which is particularly important as you kind of move further in through the transactional process towards the conveyancing stage. They're super focused on the liability and where that data has come from, and being able to prove its source. So yeah, working with a partner that's able to collect that data, but then also make it usable for you, right? Like it's all well and good it being collected, but it needs to be where you work. Well, it needs to be in your CRM, because if it's not, there's double keying involved, and again, that efficiency isn't really gained. You've gained a little bit of an edge in terms of not having to go to all these sources to collect it, but if it's not where you're working, it's another bit of friction. But these are step changes in terms of
They
efficiency.
are, but I think they're certainly within our capability, and certainly
Yeah.
within the capability of the industry and the prop tech industry, which you and I, sit very firmly in the middle of. And I think certainly from the portals and the APIs, we've come along leaps and bounds in recent years. And you want to be looking for providers and CRMs that will openly talk to other systems. So it's not all about them. I use the terminology, the sweetie jar effect. Someone sat there with all the data and information in their sweetie jar and are not willing to share. You want someone who's opening up that sweetie jar and go, yeah, how can I help? What can I have? What colour jelly bean do you want? So that you can then provide that information in real time when that person needs it. And that also helps you as well from a business point of view, because obviously they're looking at you saying, well, you're someone who can get things done. You can get it done quickly, efficiently. I can trust it. And I've got a framework that I know that supports that, and I feel trust in that framework. And that is something certainly with the Open Property Data Association, so with the Open Property Data Framework, Open Property Data Trust Framework, where that is where all the information is trying to be sourced and also controlled and managed and shared and supported. So as you can see in the graphic we've got on screen here, you know, we're looking at buyers, brokers, lenders, estate agents, sellers, solicitors, surveyors, building solicitors, and buying solicitors, and then there's so many all around that. So that's just a very small ecosystem of all the different people that are talking, all the different services and frameworks that are talking at any given time to sell and move forward a property. So it just shows you that if we're more open and we can facilitate data sharing, it's going to make the whole process for the consumer even better. And technology is key to this. Technology helps us to understand where the information is coming from and going to. We can trust it, identify gaps and opportunities, and also develop strategies so we can align with business goals. And that means individual business goals, both on ourselves and also our stakeholders, the people that and companies and processes we're working with. And this is why, you know, we need, as an industry, to invest in technology and to train and support data initiatives so that we can create that interoperability within the organisation, both on a lower level, i.e. a company like Inventrace and Catini, and also at the wider level in regards to the industry, all the different stakeholders, all the different CRMs. And without that, we're not going to be able to move forward. So we need to implement these solutions in our organisation, in your organisation, so that you've got the ability to be able to facilitate all your customer needs, meet those needs in regards to buying and selling property, and making sure that they have everything at their fingertips to be able to get to where they need to be, which is to move to their next home, to build that family life, to take that next step in their own life, their own journey, without the issues of having to wait, to be honest with you, having to rely on other sources that, to be honest with you, are just not working anymore.
Yeah.
So
And
that is the end of our presentation. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to hear them.
There isn't any questions at the moment, Sian. I understand you probably realised that Kelsey has changed to me. I just want to let you know that she had a bit of a technical difficulty and her computer shut down, so I just hopped on to stop the webinar from
Wonderful. Well done,
ending.
you.
That's all fine, but I just want to thank everyone as well for joining us for the webinar today. It's been really great. Thank you to Sian and Kieran as well. We have got a couple of people giving you a round of applause, so that's always nice.
Thank you.
If anybody does have any questions though after the webinar is finished that you think you might want to get answered, please email them over to us and we can pass them on to Sian and Kieran. Our email address is events@propertymark.co.uk and we will be happy to help. So thank you all again and we'll see you all soon.
Lovely. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good day.